I'm a rising junior at Saratoga High School, and this is my project. As Landon introduced it, it's a Core XY 3D printer. Basically what that means is that these two motors here, based on which direction they spin in and how fast they spin, this tool head moves around. So for example, when these two motors are spinning in opposite directions, the carriage moves forward and backwards, and when they move in the same direction, this carriage moves side to side. So yeah, it's slightly different from most traditional 3D printers that work with the Y and Z axis together, and then this X moving independently. But this design is superior because since the X and Y are mounted to the frame, that reduces the amount of stress on the Z axis, so we can get faster prints. I'm pretty sure this printer can print 6 times faster, actually, than the printers that we have in JA, so I'm very happy about how it turned out. So I started on this project by 3D modeling all of these parts by myself using a browser-based CADing software called Onshape. And then after printing them out, I assembled them. And while assembling this printer, I had a lot of issues with spacing. So when you 3D model something, I use the actual dimensions of my screws. For example, some of these are 3 millimeters wide. However, when I printed them out, the prints shrank. So they were actually around 2.5 millimeters big. So some of the screws couldn't fit in, and that was a big issue. So I had to redesign a lot of parts. I think I had to go through 2 or 3 iterations of this bottom frame here to get everything right. And that took a lot of filament, which was probably not good financially, but it ended up working. And after assembly, it was time for firmware. And software, I think software and firmware together took up the most amount of time in my project, and it was also the most difficult part, especially because I haven't used a Raspberry Pi ever before. And since this runs on a Raspberry Pi, there was a lot of challenges getting it to work. And also, one time when I was trying to get my printer to work, I was trying to get the motors to move, and they weren't actually moving. So they were instead vibrating, and I was confused. So I spent around 2 days searching through my configuration files, trying to figure out what was wrong with my printer. But then after that, I realized that some of the wires that the people on the internet shipped me weren't consistent because there was a red, blue, green, and black wire, but some of them were like out of order. So after rearranging the orders a little bit, cutting the wires and soldering them back together, I finally got that to work. I'm not sure why the wires weren't correct in the first place, but I am happy that I ended up figuring out what the problem was. So that was a big challenge on my project. And another big challenge I faced was getting sensorless filming to work. So before every print starts, this tool head has to go to the center of my bed. And how that works is that basically the motors move the carriage to a corner of my printer, and when it senses that the motors can't spin anymore because it's at the edge, it knows that this is a corner and it can just move to the center. And this wasn't working for some reason. And after reading documentation online, I found out that I had to jump 2 pins on my motherboard. So that's what I did. And after I did that, my board started smoking, and sparks were shooting out everywhere. So I basically fried a motherboard. So that was fun. So after I got a new motherboard, I found out that I was actually shorting out the wrong pins. And after I jumped the correct pins, I was able to get sensorless homing to work. But getting sensorless homing to work didn't mean that I could get successful prints. This right here is the first print that my printer has produced. As you can see, it's falling apart. And the second one wasn't much better. It failed after just printing a few layers. And the next two, if you look at them closely, there's a lot of quality issues. There's a lot of shrinking, which it's kind of bad. So basically, I looked at my logs, my error logs for my printer, and I found out that the firmware I was running wasn't able to understand a certain type of arc command, the G2 and G3 arcs. So I went back into my configuration files and I enabled G2 and G3 arcs, and after that, I was able to produce much better prints, such as this one. These boats are called benchies, and benchies is like kind of short for benchmark. So basically, these boats, they test a lot of the things that make a 3D printer good, such as overhangs, flow rate, top infill, and all that stuff. So after I was able to get these nice prints going, I was able to tune my settings a bit more, and I was able to produce this benchy. I think this benchy was the best one that I produced so far. It has all the settings configured and calibrated, and it turned out very nice. I think that my experience at Bootstrap was very positive, and I would like to give a special thank you to my mentor, Landon, for helping me out so much during this process. I don't think I could have made my printer without his help. And I think that the other mentors, Murad, Skylar, Jack, you guys also helped me a lot during this process. So thank you. That's it for me. Do you guys have any questions?